This case, it's the kind that really gets under your skin, makes your blood run cold. This story concerns Hannah Cornelius, a student from Stellenbosch, for whom a simple drive home with a friend, well, it turned into an absolute nightmare. We're going to break down step by step how 4 men changed that night into just complete hell, taking away every chance she, her friend Cheslin, had for survival. But the main thing, the part that's just impossible to wrap your head around, remains the total indifference, the cruelty they used to commit this awful crime, all for a tiny amount of money. This wasn't just a carjacking, it goes beyond really any human understanding. So make sure you watch until the end, because that's when we'll try to figure out what pushed these men to take such a crazy step. How this case connects to the tragedy of her mother, which happened later on. Hey everyone guys, I've been planning to create this channel for a few years now. I've noticed that right now, in the era of AI, authenticity seems more valued than ever. That's exactly why I'll be voicing these videos myself. My name's Tom. I know I should ask you guys, what city are you from? What time is it for you right now? What's the weather like? Last but not least, what's your favorite season? Why? Also, I apologize in advance if I seem a bit slow. I'm only just learning. I actually took some public speaking courses, so yeah, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd subscribe. Alright, so let's not wait. Let's get started. Today, we're focusing on the town of Stellenbosch, located east of Cape Town. A town that appears, ideal for living, but it hides dark secrets beneath its prosperous facade. Stellenbosch, also known as Eikesteden in Afrikaans, a name that sounds almost poetic. It's a university town surrounded by hundreds of vineyards, many of which play a key role in South Africa's notorious wine industry, an industry bringing in millions of dollars every year. Both of these features, the university, the vineyards, make Stellenbosch a very wealthy area to live, a place where affluence meets poverty at really every corner. On many streets, shaded by ancient oak trees that remember colonial times, you'll find boutique cafes, art galleries, where the prices can shock even wealthy tourists. It's in this affluent area, where it seemed like nothing bad could ever happen, that we find the life of Hannah Cornelius, a girl who had everything going for a happy future, but fate, I guess, decided otherwise. Hannah was born to her parents, Willem Anna Cornelius, on February 12, 1996, a regular winter day that carried the hope of a new life. Her father, Willem, served as a magistrate in a nearby town, a man who passed judgment on criminals every day, never knowing his own daughter would become a victim of the most awful crime. Her mother, Anna, worked as a practicing lawyer, defending people's rights in courtrooms. So, as you've probably guessed, Hannah grew up in a stable, professional family where education, justice, respect for the law were valued. Values that should have protected her, but ultimately couldn't. Then, 3 years after Hannah's birth, she became a sister to her younger brother, whose name remains private for his own protection, as he still lives with the horror of what happened to his older sister. Hannah quickly became a very protective older sister to him, the kind who would always be there no matter what. Her younger brother had some learning difficulties. Hannah was always right there, happy to help him as he grew up. She really had the patience of a saint when it came to explaining complex things in simple terms. Being a well-rounded, kind teenager, she also loved attending drama classes, was recognized as exceptional in them. Teachers said she had a natural talent for performing. She also played the piano beautifully, her fingers flying across the keys with such ease. It felt like music just always lived inside her. It's safe to say she was, a creative genius, someone who saw the world differently, more deeply, more vibrantly than others. Hannah thrived in high school, where every day seemed to bring new achievements, recognition. She always tried her best, eventually earned 6 distinctions, meaning her average grade was 85% or higher upon graduating, a result that opened really any door for her. Hannah, popular, happy, also had a high school sweetheart, a young man named Finello, whom she was in love with in that way, you only are when you're young, completely, recklessly, sincerely. They even went to the matric dance together, much to her father's dismay, who watched on with a mixture of pride, sadness. He didn't like seeing his little Hannah growing up, moving away from them so quickly. I mean, parents always want their kids to stay kids for as long as possible. Hannah's character, it really can't be overstated. She was a true treasure to everyone who knew her. She was kind, intelligent, very hardworking, qualities that should have guaranteed her success in life. This, of course, led her to enroll in university, specifically to pursue a Bachelor of Arts degree in humanities, a field that would let her study people, cultures, history. Hannah had an inquisitive personality, a real desire to understand the world, those around her. She asked questions where others just, accepted things as they were. Then, 2 months later, she was finally accepted into the program. The day she found out became one of the happiest of her life. In the summer of 2015, Hannah began her undergraduate studies at Stellenbosch, diving into her coursework with enthusiasm, hoping these years would be the best of her life. Although she lived nearby in the Irene Ladies' Residence, a girls' dormitory considered one of the safest places in the area, Hannah still needed to get to and from the university. It was this need for transport that would prove fatal. That's why her 90-year-old grandmother gave her a car she could no longer drive due to her age, an old blue-white Volkswagen City Golf, which became not just transportation, but a symbol of Hannah's independence. Between classes, studying, Hannah dedicated her free time to volunteering at a local animal sanctuary called Tears in Cape Town, a place where she could fulfill her desire to help defenseless creatures. Hannah was a compassionate person, interested in the world around her, just couldn't walk past someone else's pain, whether it was human or animal. During her time at university, she found it very easy to make friends, as her kindness, openness drew people in like a magnet. Thanks to her willingness to help others, she always had people to talk to. She was never, lonely. Her circle of friends just kept expanding, as she often made new acquaintances through existing connections. Friends of friends became her friends. That's what happened with a very important friend of Hannah's, when, at the start of her second year, she met Cheslin, a fellow student studying theology, a future clergyman who dreamed of changing the world for the better through faith. Cheslin was a lot like Hannah, a dedicated student who worked hard, deeply understood Hannah's demeanor. They were, I guess, kindred spirits. Hannah often helped Cheslin with his studies. Cheslin always returned the favor. It was a true friendship, built on mutual respect, support. But there were no romantic feelings between them. They were simply good friends to each other. Sometimes the strongest bonds are built on friendship, not romance. By 2017, Hannah and Cheslin were well into their second year of university. Their friendship had only grown stronger during that time. So after a long week of studying and work, they decided to go out with friends to a party on a Friday, a typical student decision after a grueling week of lectures, exams. The evening went smoothly. Everyone was in good spirits, or at least, drinking enough to seem happy. Hannah, Cheslin, and the whole group were busy playing dominoes, a popular game among South African students, a game always accompanied by laughter and friendly arguments. Well, nothing particularly special about that evening would be remembered. It was just a normal student Friday, the kind that fills the lives of millions of young people all over the world. The conversation flowed as usual, jokes, gossip, plans for the future. The happy moment of Friday slowly turned into the early morning of Saturday, May 27th, a date that would forever remain in history as a day of horror. Hannah felt their get-together was gradually winding down, so she decided to call it a night, head home before it got too late. But Cheslin knew the streets of Stellenbosch were a dangerous place for a girl walking home alone, especially at that hour, when the darkness hides the worst intentions. So, skateboard in hand, he offered to walk her to the Irene Hall's residence, which was near his own place, a decision that seemed right but became fatal. Hannah appreciated and accepted his offer, understanding that a true friend wouldn't let her walk home alone. They left their friends and started walking home through the quiet streets of Stellenbosch. A fairly peaceful journey, under the stars on a warm spring night. They reached Hannah's place so far. But now, reciprocating Cheslin's concern, Hannah worried about Cheslin walking back home alone. After all, danger doesn't have a gender. You see, her car was parked just around the corner, so she offered to drive him back, A logical decision that turned into a nightmare. Cheslin insisted he could just ride home on his longboard, showing that typical male confidence, but Hannah wouldn't take no for an answer. She knew her car was much safer than a skateboard at that time of night. She was right, but that safety, it was just an illusion. So the pair got into Hannah's Volkswagen and drove towards Cheslin's place, not knowing their fate was already waiting for them just around the corner. At 3:23 a.m. on Saturday, May 27th, a time that would be captured by surveillance cameras, Hannah parked her car on a small patch of grass while the pair talked and said their goodbyes, laughing about the night's events. But as they were talking, neither of them noticed 4 men walking past them on the road, 4 shadows in the dark, 4 predators out hunting that night. They had no idea that these 4 men had decided to turn back toward the car after spotting what they thought was an easy target. They were planning something terrible, Hannah. Cheslin became their new, unsuspecting victims, innocent people who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Given the number of small details in this case, out of respect for the victims, I'm going to follow the chronological order of events so you can understand the full horror of what happened. But using a nearby truck for cover, they approached Hannah, Cheslin, under the cloak of darkness. This is where our story takes a very dark turn, very quickly, a turn from which there was really no coming back. A sudden knock on the door instantly shattered Cheslin Hannah's sense of security, the kind of knock that signaled the end of their peaceful lives. Then, after the passenger door was forced open, a sharpened screwdriver, a folding knife were pressed against their bodies, cold metal on their skin, leaving no room for doubt. The situation became very serious, very real, very fast. Adrenaline, fear, the realization that their lives now depended on the decisions of these strangers. The 4 men forced their way into the car. Hannah, Cheslin were now true victims of an abduction, a crime that, rarely ends well. It was at this moment that one of the 4 men, Nashville Julius, leaves the other 3. Takes no further part in the rest of the evening's events. Why he left, what stopped him, we'll probably never know. His role in tracking, securing the random car was complete. He vanished into the darkness. Meanwhile, inside the car, Hannah was shoved between the 2 front seats, like some object, not a living person. On either side of her sat Vernon Whitboy, Geraldo Parsons, 2 men whose names are now forever linked to this horror. In the back, Eben van Niekerk pressed against Cheslin, keeping him under control. At 3:40 a.m., Hannah's very recognizable blue-white Volkswagen Golf pulls away with all 5 occupants, a moment captured on camera, a moment when something could still have been done, but, nobody knew. Those moments must have been the most agonizing for the couple, the uncertainty, the fear, the understanding of their helplessness. Neither Cheslin nor Hannah knew what awaited them, what kind of hell they were about to go through that night. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of a terrifying journey that was just getting started. After that CCTV footage, Hannah's car wasn't seen for over an hour during which things happened that are just terrifying to even think about. But at 4:34 a.m., it was spotted again by a surveillance camera at a gas station located not far from Stellenbosch, a last chance for someone to notice that something was wrong. Somewhere on a dusty road outside of town, among the fields, vineyards, the men had stopped the car, forcibly shoved Cheslin into the trunk like a sack of trash. They searched him, taking everything he had, including his jacket, shoes, even the last things that might have given him some small comfort. As the car pulled up to the gas station, a figure in a cream-colored jacket could be seen in the passenger seat, Cheslin's jacket, now worn by someone else. The surveillance camera inside the station captured one of the men, Vernon Whitboy, walking into the convenience store with Cheslin's wallet in his hands. He had taken Cheslin's card, was ready to drain it, using the PIN code Cheslin had provided under pressure, threats. Unfortunately, after several failed attempts to access that bank account, it turned out Cheslin had lied about the PIN code. A final act of defiance, a last way to control something, one that, it would have terrible consequences for him later. Returning to the car in a rage, the five of them continued their journey toward Crofronton, a town bordering Stellenbosch. Throughout this entire horrific journey, while Cheslin was still in the trunk, in the dark, with no air, Hannah remained in the front seat of her grandmother's car, surrounded by 3 unknown, dangerous men. She remained as compliant, cooperative as possible, hoping it would save her life. She didn't look around, she didn't argue, she didn't fight. A survival strategy, that many are taught. Instead, she just stared straight ahead at the long, dark road, trying not to think about what would happen next. The men then made several trips around the area, often stopping to visit different people, mostly those delivering, picking up substances. A normal night, I guess, in the life of criminals. All this time, Cheslin was still in the trunk, fighting for his life, for hope. He tried to kick the hood of the car whenever he thought the men weren't nearby, hoping someone would hear, someone would notice, but unfortunately, he remained locked inside. This went on until 5:30 a.m., when the men suddenly stopped the car near Crofronton, a place that would become a crime scene. Hannah asked the men why they were stopping, still hoping for the best. They told Hannah they were just going for a smoke, said they'd be on their way soon, ready to give her car back once they reached their final destination. A lie, meant to keep her calm. It was at this moment that 2 men got out of the car, walked around to the back, and pulled Cheslin from the trunk with force. They were clearly furious that he hadn't given them his PIN code. Their egos were bruised. He was pushed, shoved, forced to walk a short distance from the car, away from any witnesses, after which Cheslin was ordered to lie on the ground. It was at this moment Cheslin knew he was going to die, an instinct that is never wrong. These men planned to end his life because he dared to resist them. As he got on the ground, feeling the cold earth beneath him, Cheslin looked up one last time. The last thing he saw, 2 men towering over him with bricks in their hands, an image that would stay with him forever. Then, suddenly, everything went dark. An impact, pain, blackness. As the morning sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky and pink, gold, the horrors of the night were still not over for Hannah. Unfortunately, things were only going to get worse. After driving a short distance from where the men left Cheslin, believing he was gone, the group headed to an unused paintball field along Bottletari Road. Hannah was then violated by all 3 men. Sadly, things later escalated in ways that are, frankly, difficult to speak about. Next, they drove to a vineyard, a place of beauty that became a place of horror. Hannah sustained a life-threatening neck injury from the sharpened screwdriver before the group found a 40-kilogram rock, used it to inflict a fatal head injury with inhuman brutality. She passed away instantly from the impact, the only, mercy of that night. Climbing back into the car as if nothing had happened, they left Hannah's motionless body at the edge of the vineyard, among the vines that were meant to bring joy. As daylight flooded the farms and savannas of South Africa, promising a new day, a young couple woke up to a fresh spring weekend in their home. Living in their cozy house on the outskirts of Crofronton, they heard the peaceful sounds of birds and farm animals in air, sounds that usually brought calm. But alongside these familiar sounds, a disturbing sound, a distant groan, began to emerge, one that didn't fit the morning idyll. A groan that soon turned into agonizing cries for help, cries that would change this couple's life forever. Peeking out the window, trying to figure out where these awful sounds were coming from, the couple spotted a young man whose appearance shocked them to their core. He was stunned, looked seriously injured, as if he had just survived, true hell. Strangely, impossibly, it was Cheslin, the man who should have been gone. Despite receiving several bricks to the head, blows that should have ended anyone, he had miraculously survived, something doctors would later call a medical miracle. His mind was as clear as ever, which was the most bizarre part of the whole situation. Adrenaline, the survival instinct, do incredible things to the human body. With his friend Hannah nowhere to be seen, he understood something terrible had happened to her. He knew he needed to get help, get it immediately. Cheslin was actually walking down the road, badly injured, trying to find the nearest house where they could help. The couple he met, understandably, were terrified at the sight of the injured young man appearing on their doorstep early on a Saturday morning. At first, they even thought Cheslin was a criminal, dared to rob them, told him to leave, threatening to call the police. But he insisted, begged, screamed for them to call the police. He wanted the cops to come. Soon after, when they saw his wounds, heard his story, they realized the full seriousness of the situation, the horror of what had happened. Within minutes, Cheslin was pleading with local police to help find Hannah, repeating her name over. He described the attackers' faces with incredible accuracy, the car, where they went, everything else he could remember from the night before, every detail that might save Hannah. He was desperate to help find Hannah, hoping she was still alive, that it wasn't too late. But tragically, it was already too late. Hannah's fate had been sealed hours earlier. Just 2 hours before, while he was still unconscious, lying injured, thinking he was dying, Hannah had already been found by vineyard workers. It was confirmed that she was gone, words no one ever wants to hear, especially about someone so young, so full of life. As the lives of Hannah's friends, family were turned upside down by a single phone call, the police began a relentless search for Cheslin's, Hannah's attackers. They knew they were looking for a small blue-white Volkswagen, a pretty distinctive car, hard to miss. Luckily for them, they wouldn't have to look very hard, as the car had already been spotted late that morning, just driving around town as if nothing had happened. I guess this reflects their stupidity, heartlessness, to keep using the car of the young woman they attacked as if it were a trophy. Vernon, Eben, Geraldo incredibly continued their crime spree after what they did to Hannah Cornelius, like it was just a game, just entertainment. They were repeatedly seen near Krafontein, making no effort to hide, showing no fear of the consequences. The men reportedly harassed a woman on her way to work, just trying to make a living, then robbed her of her handbag, mobile phone with cynical ease. These men weren't seen for several hours after that. One might have hoped they had disappeared for good. But at 1 p.m. that same day, Saturday, while Hannah's body was at the morgue, they attacked another woman, this time abducting her in broad daylight. Surveillance cameras captured the car at a nearby Shell gas station, the same cameras that would become key evidence in the case. The footage shows the blue Volkswagen pulling up to the gas station with a just staggering audacity. Note that the woman they abducted is at this time in the back seat of the car with Eben van Niekerk, who is keeping her under control. This seems to be his habit, sitting in the back with the victims, keeping them terrified. But then Whitboy got out of the car, calmly, like he was just running errands, walked up to the ATM, tried to withdraw money from the woman's account. They withdrew 3,000 rand, equivalent to about $200 or 150 pounds, a pathetic amount for which they destroyed so many lives. Thankfully, this time their victim was safely dropped off along a rural road. She survived, unlike Hannah, which is the only bright note in this story. Vernon Geraldo then drove Eben to his house, dividing the loot, giving him his 1,000 rand share for his actions, splitting the money like they had earned it honestly. After that, they tried to pawn the car off to random strangers, trying to get even more money from this horrific crime. They had no idea the police had already been alerted to their movements throughout the morning, thanks to Cheslin's testimony, were now ruthlessly closing in on them while they continued to drive around in the young woman's car. The night began with 6 people crammed into Hannah's Volkswagen Golf: Hannah, Cheslin, the 4 attackers, which was now down to just 2, Vernon Whitboy, Geraldo Parsons. Just an hour after they dropped Eben home, an undercover police car spotted the missing vehicle. Driving past, as the chase began, a real, movie-like chase, a second police van joined in. Desperately trying to evade law enforcement, realizing their freedom was ending, the men in the blue Volkswagen Golf turned into the driveway of a nearby private farm, hoping to escape through the fields. From a distance, CCTV footage shows innocent bystanders watching as a detective quickly exits, pursues them on foot, a scene that looks just unreal. They keep running, but luckily for justice, further up the driveway, a security gate blocks the blue Volkswagen, preventing it from moving any further. The trap had closed. The two men try to flee on foot, one running, jumping into the river below in an act of desperation, but ultimately, it was useless. You can't escape justice. They are trapped, cannot get away from the officers, many of whom are now pursuing them, armed, ready to fire if they resisted. Their twisted, depraved game was finally over, a tale of criminals who thought they could get away with anything. After their arrest, as the handcuffs clicked shut on their wrists, Whitboy and Giraldo were more than happy to give up the names of the other two men involved in these horrific crimes. They betrayed their accomplices without any hesitation, which led to their arrest the very next day. I just want to take a moment to emphasize how little, how terrifyingly little, these men valued the lives of their victims. These men were willing to end 2 innocent lives, terrorize several others, for a few $100s, an amount that wouldn't even cover a month's rent. What's the price of a human life to people like that? $200? $300? Following this news of the arrest and the confirmation of their daughter's passing, Hannah's family was devastated. Her parents, Willem and Anna, who had dedicated their lives to justice, were inconsolable, facing the greatest injustice of their lives. It seemed the emotional pain inflicted on them had completely consumed them. They had lost not just a daughter, but a part of themselves. Over the next few months, as authorities built the case against the suspects, gathering evidence, testimony, Hannah's parents created a foundation in their daughter's honor, turning tragedy into something meaningful, aptly named the Hannah Cornelius Foundation. This foundation aims to help at-risk young people by providing education, counseling, and guidance, exactly what Hannah did in her life. Honestly, I wish I could stand here, tell you that there would be no more loss of life at the hands of these 4 men, that the tragedy ended there. But unfortunately, a second death related to this case would soon follow, a death that proves attackers take much more than just one life. In March 2018, less than a year after Hannah's passing, while the wounds were still raw, her mother, Anna Cornelius, was found gone in the waters of the South Atlantic. While it was officially ruled an accident, Willem insists his wife, she just couldn't fight anymore. He believes the pain of losing her daughter was simply unbearable, that she couldn't find the strength to go on after what happened. She walked into the ocean, just gave in, let the water take her to maybe where she could see Hannah again. After this second tragedy, which broke Willem's heart all over again, a strong case was being built against the men who ended Hannah's life, tried to end Cheslin's. In May 2018, a year after that horrific May morning, their trial finally began, a moment everyone who loved Hannah had been waiting for. The evidence against them was overwhelming, irrefutable, damning. They had eyewitness testimony, confessions from Vernon and Giraldo, who turned on each other, surveillance footage from multiple locations, forensic evidence that left no doubt, and most importantly, Cheslin, who testified during the trial, a living witness to their brutality. The same rock used in Hannah's passing, the 40-kilogram rock that caused the fatal injury, was even presented as evidence, a piece of evidence that made many in the courtroom weep. From the blunt force trauma caused by the multiple bricks to his head, Cheslin unfortunately lost hearing in one ear, a physical scar he'll carry for life. Bravely taking the stand to testify against his attackers, showing incredible strength, he looked them directly in the eyes, not letting them see his fear. Seriously, this man was on a mission to honor his friend Hannah's memory. He would not let them forget her name. Although his testimony was tearful, painful, forcing him to relive the nightmare over, his family supported him every step of the way, sitting in the courtroom. Even though the case was clearly stacked against these 4 men, the evidence was undeniable. Only 2 of them actually confessed to their actions, Vernon and Giraldo. In fact, what's most cynical, all 4 pleaded not guilty to their crimes, a strategy that, it fooled no one. Throughout these court proceedings, it seemed these men had almost no remorse for their actions, as if what happened to Hannah was just a minor inconvenience. I just can't fathom it, but these men were even smiling, laughing throughout the trial, behavior that outraged everyone present. What kind of heart do you have to laugh at a murder you committed? In the end, after all the testimony, evidence, Vernon Whitboy, Geraldo Parsons, Eben van Niekerk were sentenced to life in prison, the sentence they deserved. Nashville Julius, who left early in the evening, didn't participate in the actual attacks, was sentenced to 22 years for his role in the robbery, kidnapping, a lesser term, but still significant. The loss of Hannah Cornelius was the result of the malicious, selfish intentions of people who had no conscience. 4 men who cared about no one but themselves, who thought only of fast money, went out onto the streets to, quoting their own words, see what they could achieve, a phrase that shows their total indifference to human life. With no empathy, no concern for the consequences, no moral compass whatsoever, their demonic behavior led to the horrifying end of an innocent student, irreversible physical, psychological damage to another. The level of disregard for human life, the evil in these men it's staggering, shocking, terrifying. Honestly, I hope all 4 of them rot behind bars, that they never see the light of freedom again. Given such a heartbreaking story, a story that makes you want to weep, the best we can do is remember Hannah for who she was, alive, vibrant, kind. Hannah was a caring, empathetic person, known for her ability to help anyone who needed it, whether with their studies or by volunteering at the animal shelter. Even her last night proved that, when she offered a friend a ride home, worrying more about his safety than her own. She was always herself, never listened to the negative opinions, feedback from others who might try to change her. Instead, she insisted on her own positive mindset, saw the good where others saw the bad. From start to finish, Hannah seemed like a wonderful person, exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. Her family should be proud of who she became, despite all the pain of her loss. I've said this in a previous case about South Africa, but it bears repeating. In South Africa, an average of 8 women are killed by men every day, 8 lives, 8 families broken daily. Proportionally to the population, this is 5 times higher than the global average, a statistic that should shock all of us. Hannah, Nene, Jade, Karabo, they're all victims of South Africa's ongoing struggle against femicide, an ever-growing, long list of senseless tragedies that just shouldn't be happening. To this day, Hannah's brother, who due to his severe autism doesn't, understand the concept of death, can't grasp what happened to her, still asks his father when she's coming home, a question that breaks Willem's heart every single time. How hard that must be to have to explain to your child that his sister is never coming back. The fact that Cheslin survived the attack after sustaining such injuries is a true miracle, but his survival didn't automatically make his life easy. Due to the physical, emotional trauma caused by the assault, the nightmares, the memories, he had to take a full year off from his studies. He has since returned to his education, switched to law school, changing his path from theology to law, striving to help people like himself, Hannah, victims of violence who need protection. In a way, her legacy lives on with him, continues through his work, his purpose. There's even a fundraiser currently running to help finance Cheslin's studies, to help him complete his education. I'll leave a link to the campaign below for anyone who wants to support it. For those interested in the Hannah Cornelius Foundation, which helps support children and youth vulnerable to violence, continuing Hannah's mission, I'll also leave a link below. This is one of the most difficult cases I've ever covered, a case that leaves scars on your soul. Unfortunately, there's no clean way to wrap this up, no words that can bring real comfort. But we can remember Hannah, support Cheslin, continue the fight against the violence that took her life. Thank you for watching. This was my first video. If I seem a little intense, I apologize. I just love telling stories this way.